Hey, what's up guys? Greetings from Cocoa Beach, Florida. Just wanted to shoot this message for International Men's Day on behalf of Saving Brothers. You know, if you're struggling out there with addiction, you know, if you are using against your will, I can relate to that, and you're not alone. It is a struggle, you know, and people can't understand it unless they've experienced it and been through it. And I just want to let you know that there is hope. You know, that there is help out there. There are programs that have people in them who've experienced what you're experiencing and made it through the other side. You just got to reach out and you got to ask for help. I know what it's like to suffer, and if you're suffering and you're watching this message, just know that there is a better way. You can reach out and you can absolutely change your own life. You just need a little bit of guidance. Doesn't mean that we're bad people, it just means that we're sick. And everybody needs a hand every now and then. So it takes a lot of courage to reach out and to ask for help. I encourage you to do that. I believe in you, and you can do it.
Hey guys, I'm here to send a message of love and hope for anyone out there suffering from addiction, you know, alcoholism, drugs, gambling. The message is just don't ever give up. You know, I spent a solid 17 years on the streets using and abusing any substance I could get my hands on to change the way I feel, you know. I had over 50 rehabilitation admissions, jails, institutions. Nothing ever worked, and I'd kind of given up on myself. And my message to you guys is don't ever give up. You know, if you've got a loved one out there suffering from addiction, it's important that we take care of ourselves, but always remember to keep the hope, because all of a sudden on the 15th of September 2009 I made a different decision for the first time in my life not to pick up that first drug. And you know, 11 years down the track, here I am with an incredibly happy life. I've learned so much, and my message to you is, guys, just don't ever give up.
It's Todd Duncan. You know, there's probably no greater challenge that a parent will ever have than when they recognize that their kids are in trouble. And I am the father of two boys. My first wife died from breast cancer over 10 years ago, and both of my boys reacted to her death in a way that was ultimately the way that would lead them to addiction and substance abuse. And I think that part of the whole mental health challenge that we have in our world is addiction to whatever it is that we are addicted to. When both of your kids are showing the significant behavior of addiction, they're testing positive for marijuana and for alcohol and drug use, and you're struggling as a parent to, what do you do to save your kid's life? I don't know that I was equipped with the filter on how to make that decision. I fell back in love with my beautiful wife today, and she and I have been navigating this challenge with these guys for the better part of 10 years together. And the interesting thing is two things that I want to share with you. One, when you find out that your kids are in trouble, one of the greatest pieces of advice that I can give you is to talk to people whose kids have been in trouble and maybe are in trouble. I have found that when you talk to a lot of people about something that is near and dear to you, it involves the life of a child. If they've never been in the situation that you find yourself in, as well-being as their remarks might be, they're not in the arena. They haven't been there. They don't know what to do. I believe that there were 3 people in our lives initially, and then probably a group of 10 that spoke to us in ways to make decisions that were life-saving decisions, which leads to the second thing I want to put out there for you. For us, it was a real clear decision that our boys were in trouble, and we could either let this go on and something bad could happen to them, and we could have spent the rest of our life wishing we had done something differently, or we could make the hard decision, the toughest of all hard love decisions, and get them help. And we decided that if we got them help, they stood a better chance of surviving this than if we did nothing and let that behavior continue. What we know for sure is on the other side of a decision is either I wish I had done something more, or I'm glad I did do something that was enough. And not that we're ever done in the world of addiction. We're always trying to manage the codependency and the enabling and the lack of boundaries that typically are part of those codependent relationships. But for us, it was a decision. If we let this go on, we may be putting our kids' life at risk. And we just learned really quick that we need to do something that was hard, and we need to do something that we could look back on and be glad that we did that. Here's how it worked out. My oldest son was admitted to rehab at 4 o'clock or so on a Friday afternoon. And it had been the culmination of weeks and weeks and months of anguish, and I would argue years of anguish. But we did what we had to do. And 3 hours after he went to rehab, we received a text message on his phone that his friends had scored heroin, and that night he would have shot up for his first time on heroin. And I look back on sending him to rehab, and even though the struggle continues today, I believe that night saved my oldest son's life. Both boys are addicts. Both boys are struggling. My wife and I are doing everything we can to give them a odds-on chance to survive in life and make life work. So that's the filter on addiction. Glad you did. Wish you had.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us from all over Australia for our FBAA Digital International Men's Day e-celebration for 2020. Whether you're tuning in at home or within a group, we want to see you in these Hawaiian shirts, or something similar at least anyway, so feel free to have your webcam showing during today's sessions. It's a great excuse to dust off the Hawaiian shirts and chuck it on. I'm Mark Windram, the West Coast and Central Australia State Manager here at the FBAA, and I'll be your MC for today. As some of you might have attended earlier this year, we held International Women's Day back in March, just before COVID closed everything down, and this is our balance in the conversation. Mental health is of significant importance to us at the FBAA for the whole industry, and this day is part of keeping the conversation going with men's mental well-being and health, so that no one is excluded from the conversation, and helping to stop people falling into depression and or anxieties. These International Gender Acknowledgement Days have been there for a while, and so we wanted to shine some light on them within the industry. They are conversations that we are passionate about, as gender equality, health and well-being are all important factors within this industry. We believe that a problem shared is a problem halved or solved even. Especially with the challenges of 2020, it's more important than ever to talk to someone, and we encourage you all to speak up about any concerns you have and celebrate your contributions for the greater good of all. With that, just a special shout out to all in South Australia today, starting a hopefully short lockdown today. The whole country and the FBAA is behind you, so stay safe, guys. So let's get into it, as we've got a jam-packed agenda today. You'll hear more about this from Peter White, AM, Alex from Prospa on the pillars of IMD, then also some initiatives you can join for support. Then further, a keynote speaker to delve into the blind side of emotions, the two brains debating in your head, before we close off with a Q&A panel with the presenters. So, should you have any questions, please pop them into the chat or question box, and they'll be compiled to answer in the end session. But of course, we do have a bit of virtual housekeeping before we get started. So we've got 1.5 CPD hours allocated to today's session. However, please ensure you do watch throughout the whole session to ensure your attendance is marked, and then you'll receive an email following the session with the FBAA CPD code and feedback survey to complete. So please do fill on that feedback survey. We do appreciate anything you can give to us. Thank you to those who have provided the content for today and supported this e-celebration. Also, please refer to the International Men's Day brochure. You would have received this link to download from the Broker Support Program section of our website in the reminder email prior to today's session, or you can download it from the chat section of this Zoom meeting. This outlines a bio on the presenters and also the agenda for today's session and resources to assist you. So let's get into it. To get started, we'll hear from men all around the world who have been through tough times and how they got through it with words of encouragement. Some who are now part of Saving Brothers, which you'll hear more about later, and also Todd Duncan from High Trust, who is a great man, and although the many obstacles he has faced, how he has pushed through them and come off on top.
Hey, it's Todd Duncan. It's a pleasure to speak to all of you at the FBAA International Men's Day. Have you ever received the diagnosis of cancer? Have you ever heard those words, "you have cancer"? I have, and those words are words that are very, very hard to hear, and they are words that come straight to the core of really life and death scenarios. And I wanted to share with you, as we talk about men's health, to think about the idea behind how do you filter decision making when it comes to life-altering illnesses. And I'm not an expert in everything having to do with men's health and mental health, but I think I have some tools that I've learned in how to handle situations in life that challenge our health. And let's face it, any physical health that gets compromised, that does challenge our mental health, our mind and our spirit and our body. And I remember that diagnosis. I remember hearing that I had the C word. I had prostate cancer, and you know, it's never easy to hear that you have cancer, but it's even harder to think that cancer can take you down. And that's the first thing that I think I would tell you, is that your spirit and your attitude have a lot to do with how you handle life's diagnoses that you receive. Most of the ones that are the heaviest are the ones we don't plan for, right? And the ones that can change our life forever. My wife and I just really got clear on a couple of things. One, let's get the best doctor that we can find. Let's find somebody who knows what they're doing. Let's find somebody that's got a million testimonials, that has a lot in prostate cancer, a lot of 5-star reviews. I mean, you can imagine that, right? If you know anything about prostate cancer, there's a few side effects. One has to do with not being able to hold your urine. The other has to do with not being able to get an erection. Those are both things that mess up men. And, you know, I got really clear with my wife that those were secondary to life. Those were secondary to my health. They were secondary to me staying alive. And our decision filter, the only decision filter that we had, is what is the best choice that will give me the greatest odds for a long life. And we made the decision based on that simple formula. All the side effects could be there, but if I were alive, I would be alive, and that is better than not being alive. So as you think about mental health, you think about health challenges, you think about decisions, make decisions that favor your future, that favor the people you love and the future that they have with you. Make decisions that are hard decisions, but they're right decisions, and they're made for one purpose only, and that is, how do I get to the other side of something that was given to me that's unexpected? So I hope that that helps you out, and go for it, man. Attack when life attacks you, and attack it back, and you can win. Thanks.
Hi guys, Ash Place is my name. I hope in my short video here I can help even one person take 1 or 2 steps in the right direction. I'll be super pumped for that. Me personally, I guess I'm a fairly typical mid-50s-year-old guy. I've had a few ups and downs in life, and a couple of stories that come to mind that particularly might resonate, that certainly were powerful for me. Back in my early 40s, when I was typical middle-aged, I was overweight, I wasn't exercising, I wasn't eating well, had young kids, I had a marriage that was rocky at the time, and I really let my life slip a little bit out of control. And the thing that I did that turned me around, well, there's 2 things. One thing was to just start moving. So I'd encourage any of you guys, just start moving. For me, it was just walking around the block. And that led over time to ultimately running a couple of half marathons. But it started with just moving. But the flow-on effects for that into my life, my relationships, my business, my overall mental and physical health was super powerful. So just start one step, get moving. And the other thing that was super important for me was getting help. Most important was putting my hand up. It's bloody hard for us guys, but you've got to do it. Get help, ask for help. That was something that took me a while to get around to doing, but when I did, it changed the course of my direction in a much more upwards positive direction. So hopefully guys, don't give up. Family out there, and you guys, if you've got people in your lives that are struggling, never give up on them, always support them, and things can always turn around. Thank you guys, hope you're well.
Hey gang, I'm Andy, part of the Saving Brothers crew, and I'm a real estate auctioneer, so we should be really confident, right? But over the last few years, I've been getting help for acute depression and anxiety. Now, mine really kicked into gear when my first child was born, and that really sort of set off a chain of events that led me down this path. But it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm a much more evolved human now. But the reason why I've managed to evolve is because I've taken the time to study and learn why these things have been happening to me. Talking is great, going to the gym is fab, but they're just superficial things that just hold this horrible thing back. If you really want to make lasting change and evolve as a human being away from all of this, you've got to understand that knowledge is power. You study this thing and you'll find so many more solutions that will work for you.
Hi there, my name is Frank Sherry. Just wanted to share with you a few things about my life and some of the struggles I've had in my journey, primarily with mental health and dealing with addictions, and also some medical complications through falling into some depths of despair and anxiety and not doing much. So I've always been an active person, always been fit and healthy, apart from a few years ago where I've put on a heap of weight and sort of contributed to my mental health as well. Turned that around, found some people, found some friends, mentors, confided in them, spoke to some professionals, worked through my addictions to get them in check and control my anxiety that came with that. A lot of it came through divorce and guilt. A lot of men obviously go through the same thing, and issues with children and access. But I found talking to people, talking to other men helps. It's one of the reasons why I'm a member of Saving Brothers, which I love dearly, and it's been a great confidence and a great community for me to share and help other guys as well. Thanks.
If you're listening, you're not alone. Time after time after time, I see so many men struggling. Why? Because I was one of them. I suffered really, really bad mental health, and there was a tipping point. I was at the doctors and they were going to give me antidepressants, and that was it. I had to change. I had to make that decision to not worry about the external world, but worry about the internal world. That was the inner game. That the main, most important part of life is to look after our inner game. And with the help from Saving Brothers, as well as those around me, and me taking responsibility of myself and speaking up, that was how I was able to change. So again, if this message gets to you, please, please, please know that we're here for you. We're listening. But it's now time to make that decision to speak up. Write down, brain dump on a journal. This will really, really help as well. Take care. And I'll leave you with this. Make every breath count. Take care. Bye for now.
Oh, thanks everyone for those messages. What brilliant words. I think we can all take out of that is, ask for help. The most important thing is that you're not alone, and there's some really relatable stories, I'm sure, that were out of those. So I hope everyone got something out of those. As we don't have time to show you all these though, and they will be on the video recording that is on our YouTube channel. So please give us a subscribe, and you'll be able to get notifications of when they come up. Now, I would like to welcome one of the legends of the industry, my absolutely outstanding boss, Peter White. Peter is the Managing Director for the FBAA, who was recognised in the 2019 Queen's Birthday Honours with an AM, Member of the Order of Australia, for significant services to industry and the community. Peter is a strong and passionate advocate for industry and spends a significant amount of time with regulators and government, as well as being a registered lobbyist in his own right, and is the leading advocate for mental health awareness in our finance industry. Now, Pete will be talking about the journey, so over to you, Pete.
Mark, thanks so much, and everybody, thank you for joining us. Mark, before you go, I've got one word for you, and it is Queenslander. Yes, state of origin last night. Queensland took it out. Sorry, New South Wales, but hey.
Go West Coast.
Who? West Coast?
West Coast.
Oh, look at that. So, guys, thank you to all of you for joining us around the country, and I apologise, I don't have a Hawaiian shirt, but yes, check this sucker out. It's a suit. Anyway. We've got the Hawaiian suit going, and we're all good. Hope you've got a drink with you, a bit of a beer. We've got a beer here, of course. Yeah, it has to be, doesn't it? But wait a sec. That's not a beer. This is a beer, let me tell you. It's full. Cheers, Jed. I want you to enjoy today. I'll get back to that a bit later if I can still hold it. Got a bit of weight in it. So anyhow, we've set the scene. And look, Mark, thanks for your opening remarks and so on. And folks, download the PDF on the brochure for today. It helps to talk through the journey that we're on and for what International Men's Day is all about, which Alex will talk to us on as well shortly after this. But the journey's all important, and it's one thing for us to push on with our career, but we've got to balance that journey out to make sure we take care of ourselves along the way. And as you've heard from the wonderful speakers just then, from all around the world, are all talking a similar vein, and that's looking after your mental health. Those of you who have heard me speak before know that I talk about my challenges with mental health and severe anxieties, and that of the depressions that my wife deals with as well. It's probably because she's got to put up with me, but we won't go there. But these things are real, and we need not to ignore them. We need to understand they are a part of life's journey. It is a part of our journey. 50% of everyone in this world will suffer from some form of mental health. Remember, 8 people a day die in Australia due to depression and anxieties. And out of those 8 people, 6 are male, right? 6 men every day die in Australia through mental health illness, or mental illness. So we can look after ourselves. And these conversations, which we started back in 2016, and I'm so proud that the industry now has this as a very open conversation, all join to openly talk about looking after one another. And you'll hear a bit later about Savings Brothers, that I'm also part of. It's a magnificent initiative of looking after ourselves. We need to do that. We need to make sure we look after one another. It's important. It's there to help us get through what we have to get through on a daily basis, because life's not perfect, and apologies, shit happens. It ain't a perfect world. We just need to be able to work through it and keep going. So I'm not going to hold up too much from proceedings. I do want to thank Alex, who's speaking next, and then Philip from Savings Brothers, and Danny's going to talk to us from Empathic Consulting, talk to us on specific subjects there that will actually help us in our day-to-day lives. But before I go, I want to share a very, very important secret with you, right? So you can't tell anyone because it's a secret, right? Something like that. As of, well, hopefully it'll be in the media tomorrow, but the FBAA, in conjunction with Suncorp and Assure, are about to launch Australia's first ever confidential counselling program for brokers in Australia and their families. This is something that has been uniquely designed through for the FBAA and assured as the professional, or Assure they're called, their professional counselling service that sits behind this, and supported financially through Suncorp, wonderful people. We're providing this counselling program which will help you if you need to reach out to someone because you've hit a wall, that you're dealing with tough times. They can talk to you about your mental health. They can talk to you about addictions. They can help you with financial counselling. It's all confidential and it's free. This is why Suncorp's got behind it. They're picking up the tab. There are 4 consultations that are available to you free. And then, if you need to go further than that, then that comes back to something you'll need to manage. But this has never been done before in Australia. And this is specifically for brokers in this country. And as the first release for the next 6, maybe 12 months max, it is for FBAA members and their families. And then we're going to broaden it out to the entire industry. This is an entire industry initiative. We've just taken the first step off the base, and this is a really exciting thing. And I'm so proud that we've been able to partner with Suncorp and Assure to actually bring this to everyone. It's going to be a great, great thing, and it's there for you to take use of. I want you to make use of it because it's there for you. Right? It's there for you and your family. All right, don't forget that. So it's called the Confidential Counselling Program, CCP. Watch out for it. It will be in the media within the next day or so. We'll continue to talk about it. There's information on the FBAA website, and please ensure you make use of it. And in a couple of weeks' time, I have the next Q&A with Whitey program. And on there, not only are we going to be talking about the primary subject of a best interest duty, and the country's leading expert, David Carson, will be there with me, who wrote our training program. He's ex-ASIC. He wrote large parts of the NCCP, including RG209. He is one of the smartest men when it comes to regs. So make sure you join in for that. But we will also have Renee from Suncorp and Nicolette from Assure, And we'll be also talking a large part of that conversation around the counselling program. And you'll have the opportunity to ask questions on there. Because don't get me wrong, the best interest duty in its own right is putting stress on everyone, right? So this is an intentional launch at this point in time to make sure we're there to support you if you're struggling with things. And keep an eye open for Q&A with Whitey Thursday fortnight out, and you'll be able to hear more about the program and also the final piece around best interest duty. I've probably said enough. Thank you to our speakers today. Thank you to our supporters. A big shout out to Todd Duncan from the USA, who has just been so brilliant in getting behind our mental health initiatives, and all the people who put those videos together from around the world, just for us. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And again, thank you to our speakers and supporters today. And thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm trying to see how many people have actually got the Hawaiian shirts on. That's okay. Make sure you get a drink, relax and chill. And you got some great speakers that are about to talk. And for that, I'll shut up and move on. Mark, I'll hand back to you, and enjoy everybody, and don't forget to have a drink.
Thanks, Pete. So I'm assuming you're allowing me to have a beer at 9:53 in the morning over here in Perth. So that sounds good to me.
Sorry, Mark.
Look, thanks very much for that.
Can't hear you, mate. Can't hear you. Sorry, sorry. Can't hear you.
Oh, no, that's a shame. It's not actually coffee in here. Thanks very much, Pete. Look, we are very lucky to have you as one of the leaders within this industry, and that's not just me suck you up. Maybe it is a little bit, but that's okay. But really, just for your knowledge and expertise within the finance industry and your continued advocacy through the health and wellness and everyone, it's just been a consistent through my time in my almost 8 months with the association, obviously a lot longer than that before as well. So thanks very much, Pete. Now, next up, we have Alex talking about Alex, the head of partnerships at Prospa, covering off the 6 pillars that form the basis of IMD. Now, Alex brings us 20 years of experience across the financial services industry and has a strong track record of delivering sustainable growth in challenging and competitive markets. Working across various industries and distribution channels, Alex builds mutually beneficial partnerships that help provide small business owners with better access to finance. Alex had a huge involvement in our International Women's Day event back in March too, and is first and forefront within this balanced conversation. So over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Pete, Mariah, and everyone for joining us today. So I don't have a slide deck to go through, but rather I thought I'd take the opportunity today to talk about what International Men's Day actually is and the basis of which it was formed. I did a little exercise over the last couple of weeks, a bit of a mini project to work out how many people actually knew about IMD, so International Men's Day. I reckon 98% of the people I spoke to had never heard about it. But when prompted, have they heard about International Women's Day? Of course. The vast majority had heard about it. So I think that really does talk to one of the fundamental issues we have as men is we don't talk about stuff. We need to collaborate more and really get down to the bottom of our emotions and feelings and that sort of stuff. However, if we think about initiatives like Movember, nearly everyone's heard about Movember. Why? Because it's a bit of bravado behind it. Grow some facial hair, be much more manly, and let's celebrate. So naturally, we're going to get behind those sorts of things. Albeit, it's no coincidence that Movember coincides in the month of November, which is also, the 19th International Men's Day. So I think it's a fantastic initiative by the FBAA. Pete's drinking and got to put his sunnies on. Apologies for my background. I think it's in reverse. It was working before. I can't fix it. I've tried. I've flipped myself. But maybe it's just a sign of, things being a little bit backwards. So I'm going to roll with it. So I wanted to just sort of share what the broad objectives were that formed International Men's Day. So they're commonly referred to as the 6 pillars. So basically the first one is to promote positive male role models. Now we're not talking about rock stars, superstars, celebrities, because often they're rolled out. like Pete, you know, we roll out Pete, he's a celebrity. It's more about it's more about hearing from everyday working class people who are just trying to get through life as best as they can. You know, they hit a few bumps in the road, and we've already heard some amazing videos today, people sharing their stories, which is amazing because as guys, we can relate to other guys, and it's no different women or like it's just about understanding. Whenever you're talking to someone, rather than being empathetic, you can be sympathetic. So it just changes the way you look at things. We also want to celebrate men's positive contributions to society, community, family, marriage, the environment, whatever it is. So it is an opportunity to celebrate our contributions. The theme for 2020 International Men's Day is actually better health for men and boys. And that takes into the third pillar, which is to focus on men's health and well-being. That includes socially, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So, you know, it's really important. We've heard about various challenges that people have had, either physically or mentally. And again, one of the challenges we've got is just openly talking about this stuff. So it's great to see people coming forward and showing that element of vulnerability, you know, to share with other guys. So you're not in it on your own. Fourth is to highlight discrimination against men in areas of social services, social attitudes, and expectations, even law. So we've come a long way, and we're not there yet. We can't afford to be complacent. But it's also equally important to understand the word I'm going to use a lot today is balance. So I don't want to sit here and start throwing stones in any sort of direction, but rather talk about consideration and balanced views. The fifth being improving gender relations and promoting gender equality, which is what I was just alluding to. And the last but not least is to simply create a safer, better world where people can live free from harm and grow to reach their full potential. So if we do that last point, everything else is sort of easy and we can all sort of sing Kumbaya. We're not there yet. So I think, Pete, you shared some really sad statistics in terms of what's happening around the place and how many people are, how it's impacting men. And I just wanted to elaborate on that a little bit more before I jump into something a little bit more lighthearted, but hopefully still meaningful. I was looking at some stats, and I think it's really important that we talk about them, right? Because we're really crap at talking about this stuff. So globally, men die 6 years younger than women. That's just a statistic. 3 out of 4 suicides are men. 95% of people who die at work are men. Sorry, that's my dog. And men under 75 are twice as likely. I'm just going to grab him. You've got to love Zoom, live Zoom. There we go.
While we have a dog break, obviously, if there's any questions for Alex, we can fire them through the chat box as well.
Look at this. He's with me now.
Well, it wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without a special visitor of some kind. So luckily, this one's fairly cute.
Just keeping it real. So, and lastly, and I think this is probably one that really does talk to the fact that we're not great at collaborating and sharing and talking about things that are going on, is that men under 75 are twice as likely to die from preventable causes than women. Now, that one is a scary one for me because that suggests we're either complacent or we're taking the attitude of she'll be right, or we're not prioritizing, or we're simply not talking. So hopefully, you know, today is about sharing. You're hearing a lot of stories, a lot of testimonials, a lot of best practice. And I would like to take the opportunity to share some of my personal experiences. So I'm a father of 4 children. I've got 3 girls and a boy. It's fair to say I was brought up with some old-fashioned European traditions. especially as it relates to the role of men and women. You know, it's traditions that I'm sure most of you would be familiar with. You know, it's a man's role to provide and protect the family. It's the woman's role to sort of run the home, cook, clean, care for children. You know, that was quite typical of my household. The world has changed, and however, the word again that comes to mind is balance, and that's become more evident to me, especially since I've had children. Now, for some that don't have children, I'd like to, you know, share my experience so that way maybe you can apply it in your own world. But balance does mean, balance means something different to everyone, and that's okay, but because I think it's the intent that comes behind it. So I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about my experience with work-life balance. You know, we talk about addictions and it's commonly linked to drugs, alcohol, gambling, and I don't want to take away from the severity of those particular things. But I want to remind people that there's also other addictions, and that could come through food, lifestyle choices, technology, or even work habits. So when I talk about work-life balance, I've typically, like many, continuously strive to achieve excellence through my work, and this generally attracts a hell of a lot of hours. Hours that I was happy to do, and often I would try and convince myself that I had to do them, but they were choices, and they were where I was placing priority. So when I think about priority, there was one particular event in my life that really challenged my thinking and really made me think, wow, I've got this terribly wrong. And it was on a day where I had a board meeting at work, and these board meetings traditionally went overtime. And on that particular day, my youngest daughter was 3 at the time. She went to daycare, and they had a Jersey day at their daycare where they were encouraging the fathers to come in for an afternoon tea and wear their jerseys and spend the afternoon with their child in the daycare. Now, my wife gave me very sage advice, and that was don't commit to something you won't deliver. So if you're going to tell your daughter you're going to show up, you better show up. You've got a board meeting that typically goes over time. Don't let her down. So just either surprise her or that way, you know, you've hedged your bets. And I'm like, okay, we'll go with that. Now, I arrived in my jersey. I was 1 minute late. Now, I was meant to start at 2 p.m. I literally walked in, I kid you not, at 2:01 to find my daughter. There were a lot of fathers who, you know, lucky me, got there 15 minutes early and events kicked off earlier than planned. But I walked in to find my daughter sobbing, like hysterically, you know, when they can't even catch their breath, they're just sobbing in the far corner. And I thought, oh my God, she's hurt herself, or what's going on? And I walked in, and she didn't even notice I was there. And then when she looked up, her eyes, she ran and she just jumped on me. And the hug she gave me, she couldn't catch her breath. When I found out what had gone wrong, it was she thought I wasn't going. She thought her world was crashing at that very point over me just not showing up. All these other fathers were, and, you know, some kids don't have fathers, and these are the trials and tribulations that children go through. But to think that I had a part in that, and the way she felt in that moment, I thought was like, it really broke me. So when I thought about it later, I was actually reflecting that night, talking to my wife. It's incredible. By the time we would have picked her up on any normal day, 4 or 5 o'clock later that afternoon, she would have gotten over it. And she would have been fine. She would have been smiling, her happy, cheerful 3-year-old self. We would never have known that had happened because they're resilient. They bounce back. But in that moment, it did happen. And the fact that I was there to witness it, and then it occurred to me, how many times have I let her down? And that was really, really powerful. Now, I know it's not as critical. And I wanted to try and find an example where it's not necessarily life-threatening, but rather the choices we make as men and the impact it has where I thoroughly enjoyed that afternoon with her. And I felt so grateful that I made the choice to get there, albeit, I made a note to myself never to be late ever again for that reason. But the roles that we play and the role models as role models that we give to our children. So 4 children, 3 girls, 1 boy. And I've now become even more aware and astute as it relates to equality. I want my 3 girls to have every opportunity available to them. So I'm more conscious of what we're doing as men, the roles we play. How do we create the environments for everyone to have that equal opportunity? But equally, I think about my son. Sometimes I think this poor guy, when I'm at work, he's with his mum and 3 girls, and he's a real boy's boy and needs his time, but he's stuck around girls all the time. But what do I want to teach him? What role do I play as a father, as a man, to this boy living in a house full of girls? And it's little things. Now, I don't cook. It's not because I think that's my role, not my role as a man. It's because I'm really shit at cooking. However, what I do is where I can, and when I'm home, I will try and be in the kitchen, and I can peel potatoes. God knows I can mash them. I can wash up. And I show that to not just my son, but it's to my daughters to say, well, at least if you're present, you're doing your bit. And I think when you look at life and you look at the challenges that are brought to you, a lot of that is choices. Some of them you can get stuck in a rut, and that's where we need to talk. My more recent experience is my eldest just turned 16 last week. 3 months ago, right in the peak of COVID, she decided to get her first boyfriend. Let me tell you, and for some of the older gentlemen here that might have older daughters, they're probably smirking and laughing right now, thinking, yep, been there, done that, good luck, buddy. Well, I've been talking to anyone that's prepared to listen, asking them for tips and tricks and how do they handle it? Because I got to say, I was struggling as a father. This is my firstborn, my daughter, and he's this boy in her life. What's my role? Do I give him the stern word and have a chat to him and play that mean guy and put the fear of God in him, or do I embrace him? Like, what do I do? And typically, I wouldn't ask anyone, and that's quite typical of men. We just don't talk about it. In fact, I asked some of my close friends who are older and have been through this, and it's amazing how so many of them came back with very little support, very little by way of best practice, because most of them were at work, chose to ignore the whole situation. My wife dealt with it. What could I do? Or weren't really forthcoming. And again, and this is only recent, this really does highlight how terrible as men we are in terms of sharing or getting involved, especially on the emotional side. Let me tell you, I was very, very emotional when I was thinking about, my 3-year-old daughter who thought, her world was crashing because I didn't show up. My 15-year-old daughter who just turned 16, who's now got a boyfriend, and we're challenging, new norms and expectations. And most of that is in my mind. So I'm sitting with her talking about what I'm feeling. And it's really odd sitting down with my daughter, telling her about the journey I'm going on, in her just deciding she's got a boyfriend. Now, fortunately, he's a lovely guy, very respectful. Things are going 3 months in reasonably well. But I suppose when you talk about mental anguish, when you talk about sacrifice, the roles that we play as men in terms of work and not being there for family or friends, or because we're not necessarily choosing balance. And so that's sort of my message today when we talk about the purpose of International Men's Day. And I was quite privileged that Pete asked me to speak at the International Women's Day and my experiences there. I think there's a lot to be said about balance and just being respectful, and ultimately making sure that we communicate. And that's why I love the opening of the session today with some really vulnerable experiences, people sharing their personal experiences. And you're not going to get much more vulnerable than the stories we heard now. Now, mine, I wanted to bring it up because just because it's not a drug addiction or alcohol or gambling, like something, mental stress and mental health comes from the things that give us, make us uncomfortable. And it's okay to talk about them too. So that's my message to everyone is, let's make sure everyone's aware about this day. It's not about, us, going out there and starting up a boys club, but rather it's more about us coming together to collaborate and share and understand as like-minded individuals. But it's only going to work if women are a part of this day, and equally with International Women's Day, it only works if men are a part of that day too. So it's a message of equality, it's a message of balance, and ultimately going back to the theme of what is International Men's Day 2020, and that's better health for men and boys. So thanks to Pete, Mariah, and Mark and the other presenters as well. I'm sure they'll share a lot of great insights as well. And I'll finish with New South Wales was robbed, and both game 1 and game 3. I can't believe it was repeated again. But anyway, I'm done.
We'll rename Alex Donald. That's what I reckon. He was robbed.
Wow.
So I don't think we even get that game over here, to be honest, and that's okay with me. It seems like a whole lot of rubbish, but that's fine. Look, I think a very good points you make, Alex. I'm also completely shit at cookie, but I'm very good at the cleaning side of things as well. So it really is playing to your strengths and being a good team, isn't it? And I try and chop up some, carrots or whatever it might be, and I'm very, very slow, and I'm fine to admit that. So more strength to you, mate. Thanks very much, mate.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Cool. Now, next we'll hear from Philip. Now, he's the founder of Saving Brothers, which some of you may already know. I'll start again, guys. You may already be part of Saving Brothers. Philip does want men around the world to know they are not alone. Phil's goal is to create a global brotherhood that cares for every brother's physical, mental, and financial health. So I'll let Phil explain further about this, and he'll also be on the Q&A panel later, which I'm excited about, to answer your questions too. So over to you, Phil.
Thank you, Mark. Hi there, everyone. Philip Robison's my name, and I'm the founder of Saving Brothers. So what is Saving Brothers all about? Well, just over 2 years ago, I attended an event that for me was life-changing, and it was really about finding out what is your purpose in life. For me, what came through was a real passion for wanting to make a difference, for wanting to build a legacy in changing men's behaviour. You see, us as guys, we're not the best when it comes to being proactive with managing our health, and I'm referring to our physical health as much as our mental health. And being International Men's Day and our focus through the FBAA on mental health, goodness knows we're under significant stress in the finance industry. I know that because I previously experienced that level of stress going through the 2008-2009 global financial crisis when I too was a mortgage broker. In fact, I was a mortgage broker for 18.5 years, of which some of that time I was a mortgage manager. And it's pretty challenging when your revenue pretty much drops almost 75% overnight. It creates great stress. And I didn't really address that stress particularly well at that time. So much so that in 2014, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So fast forward a little to now, I decided that it was really important to make a difference. And I wanted to make a difference in men's lives, not just in my own backyard, but across the world. And in so doing that, I created a brand called Saving Brothers. And it's really about men and saying that all men matter. It doesn't matter whether you're here in Australia or in another country around the world. I'm a great believer that we are the accident of our birth. But we want to help men reclaim the sovereignty over their health. So a lot of diseases are quite preventable if we would only go regularly, even if it's just once a year, to see a doctor. Women are educated from a very young age because they've got breasts and periods. And so they form a relationship with a doctor and they're educated to do so, to go and get these things checked. It's ingrained in them. Generally, but not always, most of us blokes, us guys, don't go to a doctor unless our leg's about to fall off. So one of the key things around our hashtag is called Keep 5 Alive. And that's a system where we're building an app that'll be delivered by January of 2021, where men will be able to engage, men will be able to support other men, just 5 men. And when those 5 men are taught how to support another 5 men through using our wellness app, the beautiful thing when you take that down 11 levels is that we can impact the lives of some 244 million men across the world. You know, the other thing about that is we don't only impact the men, we impact their families, their wives, their children, because these men are taking proactive steps to reclaim the sovereignty over their health. We're going to have a global challenge around the Keep 5 Alive. In fact, we'll be sending caps, beautiful caps that we're having made with a beautiful digital emblem of Saving Brothers on them, sending them all over the world, from Kenya to Jamaica to New Zealand, obviously our own backyard here in Australia, the US, Canada, other parts of the world will receive these caps. And these men will shoot a short video supporting Saving Brothers. Saving Brothers will be a platform where men can get education, resources, and be proactive about their health. Right now, it is a very stressful time, not just for brokers because they've got so much extra to do on their plates in terms of assessment of loans. Goodness knows, the bid's about to come in from the 1st of January. That'll present more stress. But it's not just the broker, it's the customer, that the customer is going through an unprecedented time. And ultimately that stress can be manifested and pushed onto the broker. I myself used to find that it was very difficult at times dealing with clients because they were bringing their emotions. So the important thing for us blokes, us men, us brothers, is we need to talk. It's not good enough just to say, hey, how you doing, mate? Are you okay? Because as guys, we're really good at deflecting, aren't we? We're really good at not answering the question, yeah, I'm okay, I'm not bad. Hey, but why don't we ask a better question that actually elicits a response? It's not about solving their problem, but what if we ask this question? Hey, how you doing? How's your day going out of 10? We're compelled to give an answer as men. We'll give a score, even if the score's a low 1 or 2. Remembering we don't need to solve their problem, we just need to give them a safe space to be able to listen. Oh, it's only a 2. So what was it about that that made it a 2? Have you ever had an 8? When was the last time you had an 8? And this is showing real empathy and caring. And they are parts of the cornerstone of what Saving Brothers is all about. So I'm very proud to be associated with the FBAA and International Men's Day. And I want to thank everybody for the opportunity for being involved. But remember, it's not just about one day, it's about your whole life. And let's get together and let's do that challenge. Keep 5 alive. In the meantime, stay well and enjoy your day.
Thanks, Philip. And look, thanks to all of the guys from all over the world for sharing their words of encouragement there. Now, for our next session, we have a keynote speaker who is the CEO of Empathic Consulting. After a career in corporate strategy and management consulting within Australia's largest financial services organisations, Daniel now helps businesses and leaders to drive performance through people, culture and empathy. Blending his background in mathematics and strategy with a deep understanding of emotions, neuroscience and behavioural economics, Daniel has become an expert in building the capabilities, tools, and strategies to embed strategic empathy. Daniel will go into the blind sight of emotions, the two brains debating in your head. Now, over to you, Daniel. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. It's great to be part of such an important event and to hear some of the stories that have been shared already. And it's really inspirational. So thanks, Philip and Alex, for sharing your stories. So we're going to talk about this idea of the blind side of emotions. And I'm really fascinated by emotions. I'm fascinated by emotions and people and why we do what we do. I'm going to talk a bit about that. And one of the things that I found early on in my career was Niccolo Machiavelli had this great theory. Now, he had a lot of theories that you might think aren't appropriate for today. But one of them was that there was two forces that drove every human decision. Every man's decision is driven by two forces alone. And those were love and fear. Even at Machiavelli's level, he knew that emotions were what really drove us. And let me show you a time when I was feeling love and fear in pretty high amounts. Now, the love part of this probably is pretty straightforward. This is my beautiful wife, Miranda, and our gorgeous little daughter, Zoe, minutes after she was born. The fear part might need some explanation. You see, Zoe was the result of 11 IVFs over 10 years. Well, not really. She was just the result of the last one, because the first 10 ended in failure. And I was terrified up until this moment that this one was going to as well. And that fear was very visceral. I'm happy to report that everything went well. We're loving every moment now, and Zoe's a happy, healthy little 3-year-old, and it's been interesting and fun during COVID, and we've had our moments there, but we're loving every moment, even the not so good ones. This was me putting her in the car after a bit too much peanut butter, and I'm saving this up for the 18th. I'm sure she'll love it when I pull this one out of the bag. But really where this came to a head for me was in a conversation I was having with a CEO. We've been working together for quite some time, and he said to me, listen, Daniel, if you can't measure it, it doesn't matter. And if you work in financial services, which I know most of you do, and this is a really common thing, isn't it? We measure, we manage what we can measure, the numbers are important, and he had this view that if you can't measure it, it doesn't matter. And I challenged him that day. I said, John, do you love your wife? He said, of course I do. You know that. I said, I thought so. And so do you measure it? Like, is there a graph somewhere, a chart, a spreadsheet? Is there some sort of number that you put against the love you have for your wife? And even if you did, let's say you got a number, 83. Would that number really tell me anything about your relationship? Would that really be able to uncover what's going on? And the sad reality is that sometimes we can easily fall into this trap. I've got a degree in mathematics, I'm a left brain thinker, I love numbers. But we need to know that numbers don't tell us everything. Not everything that matters can be measured. And so in this, we need to really understand that whether it's in our work lives, in our business lives, in any part of our lives, we live in two worlds. We live in a tangible world. We live in a world of numbers and measures and stuff you can touch, and all of that stuff is important. Don't let me tell you that it's not. It's absolutely critical. If you're running a business and you don't manage your P&L, you don't manage your balance sheet, then it doesn't matter how nice your culture is, does it? But you do need to know that this is not the whole world. There's also an intangible world, a world of relationships and emotions, of values and culture. And all of these things absolutely matter. And today I really want to unpack why this is so important for us as humans, why this is so important for us to think about as men. Because we can too easily get trapped in that tangible world, can't we? We too easily get trapped in this idea that, well, the numbers are all that matters. What's the bank account looking like? How many new customers have we got? We forget that actually there's a lot more to it. And part of the challenge we have here is actually to do with our brains. You see, your brain's amazing. Inside your head, you've like won the lottery, right? Inside your head, you've got 85 billion neurons connected through trillions of pathways. The human brain is the most complex system in the known universe, and you just so happen to have one inside your head. Lucky you. Like, that's the greatest gift ever, right? One other thing you need to know about it, though. It's amazing, but it's old hardware. Most scientists agree that the brain, human brain, hasn't changed much in terms of shape, structure, or form in something like 10 to 50,000 years. And for most of that period of time, your brain has been awesome at living in a very specific type of environment. You grew up in a village, in a small community, in a tribe, surrounded by a small number of people who are exactly like you. We spent most of human history, and our brains have been perfectly designed to live in these small homogenous groups where not too much changes. You know, you're born, you learn stuff when you're a kid, you get to 15 or 16, you start having lots of kids, you live for another 10, 20 years, you die, you played a good game, well done you. The complexities of our modern world are something our brain was never designed to work through. And this is where the simple things in our life can sometimes consume all of our ideas, consume all of our thoughts, and we can focus on them. And we can steer away from that complexity. I often think that business is complicated, whereas people are complex. And if you haven't heard of this differentiation before, let me make it really clear. So mathematics is complicated. Right? If there's any other maths nerds like me in the Zoom, you'll look at this and go, oh, cool, is the next part of this session solving this equation? It's not, don't worry, I'm not going to bore everyone to tears. But the thing I love about mathematics is that while it's complicated, it's predictable. It follows rules. There's certain things that can and can't do different things. There's a whole set of rules and structures and systems that it follows, and therefore it's complicated, but it's not complex. You see, people are complex. Like, you send a guy to the shops to get salad dressing, you don't know what he's coming home with, do you? Walks out, he's got a 6-pack of beer and a jar of jam. What happened? I don't know. Go to the Bunnings, that's right, that's right there. Go to Bunnings, you come home, you got a hedge trimmer, your wife says, we don't even have a hedge. You're like, but it was cheap, I had to get it. What could I say no? Look, humans do this sort of stuff all the time. And it's because humans are complex, which means tiny little things can have a huge impact or no impact at all. Actually, really big things can have a huge impact or no impact at all, and everything in between is possible, even changing on different days. The complexity of what happens in these 85 billion neurons in our heads shape everything in our reality. And when we try and simplify all of this, we don't step into it, things can go horribly wrong. See, economics has one of these problems, doesn't it? You know, economic theory is that we're rational actors who maximize our utility. I think Economics 101 still talks about something like that. Well, let me challenge that and ask you a question. If humans are rational, how many types of car would there be? Maybe one or two, maybe a small, medium, and large. There wouldn't be thousands, and we certainly wouldn't just change parts of them every year just because. You see, the thing we need to know is that we are sometimes rational, but it's pretty rare. And humans are mainly driven by emotions. Now, these guys, our friends at Jeep, they worked this out, didn't they? Does anyone own a Jeep? If you do, let me just apologise up front. We were just about to say a few nasty things about them. I used to work for insurance companies, and as an insurance company, we hated Jeeps. They were heavy, they were slow, they were super expensive. We didn't like them at all. And maybe because some of those reasons, back in 2009, Jeep used to sell about 3,000 cars in Australia each year. Coming to 2014, they sold 35,000 cars a year in Australia. Incredible, right? 10 times, amazing. Now, the rational people are thinking, well, they must have made them cheaper or faster or better in some way. No, they didn't. Still crappy cars. Don't buy a Jeep. They're still terrible cars. What they did, though, is they stopped worrying about the car, didn't they? They started worrying about you and how you felt. Remember the ads? Do you want your child to go to school talking about how cool you are as a dad? Do you want to have your neighbours be jealous of all the awesome places you go to? Do you want to be able to drive in this place? I mean, you don't know where this is, and let's be honest, a Westfield car park's probably about as rough as your car's ever going to do it, but don't you want to feel like that? If that's who you are, if that's what you want to feel, all you got to do is buy a Jeep and say, I bought a Jeep. If you watch those ads, those campaigns that they ran in that period, they didn't show a price. They didn't show features. They showed nothing about the car. Actually, they only showed a car for about 1 second at the end of the commercial because they knew what we all need to know. We don't buy these things because of what they are. We buy them because of how they make us feel. And until as men we can understand that emotions are critical, emotions come first, then we're always going to fall into these traps of simplicity. And I really want to emphasize this. For humans, for people, emotions always come first. And there's this amazing case study of Blindsight that brings this to life. So what they found was a group of people who had lesions on their visual cortex. This meant that they couldn't see, legally blind, they couldn't see. Their eyes worked just fine. But the region of their brain, their visual cortex, couldn't process it. Here's where it gets interesting. They would put these people into an fMRI scanner and they would show them a photo of someone frowning. And they would frown. They would then ask the participant, why did you just frown? And they said, I have no idea, I just felt like it. And parts of their brain would light up to show that they were visually upset. They would show someone smiling. Their brains would light up, they would start smiling, and again, the experimenter would say, why are you smiling? And they'd say, no idea, just felt like it. And here's what we now know. The signal going from your eyes, from all of your external senses, travels to certain parts of your brain to be processed, to be understood. But they all first go through your limbic system, your amygdala. And this ancient part of our brain that controls our emotions, it checks out what's coming in before we even think about it. Your emotions care about what it's seeing before you know what you're seeing. Emotions always come first, and the brain's designed like this. If something's scary, you don't have to wait until you work out what's scary about it. If it feels scary, run. There's a good chance you'll save yourself. Emotions always come first, even when we try to ignore them. And so what I really want to get across to us here is, as men, are we tapping into our emotions? Are we thinking about the emotions of others? Are we looking for ways, as we just heard, to have empathy? And I want to clarify, this is my definition of empathy. Empathy is not feeling sad when someone else is sad. Empathy is not necessarily being overwhelmed by those emotions. People often ask me that, if someone else is sad, shouldn't I feel sad? Well, it might not be particularly helpful because then you've just got two sad people. But what it is important is understanding what's going on for them. Understanding what's happening. Why do they feel like they feel? And it's not judging that experience. It's not mirroring that experience necessarily. It's definitely not walking in someone else's shoes. And this is really interesting. People define empathy as walking in someone else's shoes, but let me challenge it. Because when you walk in shoes, whose experience do you have? You have your experience. If you really want to have empathy, whose experience are you trying to understand? The other person's experience. Empathy is about trying to understand what's going on for others. And this is sometimes hard for us. We do struggle in this space. We need to understand why we struggle. We need to understand what blocks us. And there's this thing that our brain does that we really want to dive into here. It's this idea of these things called mental models. So the way your brain works is quite amazing. Your brain starts out knowing pretty much nothing. Imagine your brain has this monstrous filing cabinet. When you're born, the filing cabinet is pretty much empty. But from day one, you start filling things in, right? You start learning how the world works. You learn what a chair is, you learn what a table is, you learn how tables and chairs go together. And these associations become these little cards, little punch cards we write and we put away in these filing cabinets in our head. And they help us to navigate the world. They help us to walk into a room and not have to work everything else out from scratch, which would be very slow and would probably die in an ancient world. We'd all probably agree with that. Instead, what we do is we build these shortcuts, these frameworks, these mental models, and these things help us understand how the world works. The challenge we really have here is that your brain wants you to believe that those mental models are objective truths about the world. We all have them, don't we? You know, we all think if someone doesn't want to come into the office on time, maybe it's because they're lazy. And that sits in our head, and maybe we challenge it sometimes, maybe we don't. Let me give you a horribly stereotypical answer, and I mean no offense to anyone who falls into these two categories, but just for demonstration, imagine you were born into a very traditional English household, you know, real Downton Abbey style. If someone was yelling in that environment, what would that mean? It'd mean something pretty bad's going down. It's rare, someone's yelling, that would be scary, wouldn't it? Now imagine you grew up in, say, a traditional Italian household. What would yelling mean there? Again, stereotypical, but it might mean people are awake. It might even mean nothing. So here's the question. Does yelling mean something bad's going down or nothing? The answer doesn't mean either. It means nothing until it's interpreted by a human brain, until it's interpreted by a subjective belief system and judgment. Until we hit that point, it means nothing. And so I've got some questions I want to challenge you around some of the things that you might believe. First of all, when we get into a situation and we think something, we feel something, ask myself, so what do I believe is true about this? What is my belief? Now, often we can answer that pretty quickly. Let's say I was to ask you, was Trump a good president? You'd come up with an answer for that straight away, no problem. And you might have a different opinion to others, and I'm not going to interrogate that now. But my second question is, why do you believe what you believe? What's the basis for that? So when I hear yelling and I think, oh, something bad's going down, is that real, or is it just because that's what I learned when I was a kid? If I think, oh, I can't talk about my emotions, men don't cry, why do I believe that to be true? And then the third question is, well, what else might be true? What else could be the case? Maybe crying is okay. And why might someone else believe that? See, we get trapped in these mental models because we've created these worlds for us with these rules, that this means this, that this has to lead to this, that my job is to do these things. And we need to be really clear here. Most of those structures are models that your brain has built that you can challenge anytime you want. This idea of getting outside of our heads is really important, because what we tend to do is we see, and this happens for men so often, we react to situations. We feel like the world happens outside of us. People say, do, they act, and then when they act, we have to react. We have a reaction. You hear people say, oh, they said that, and therefore I got angry, or I got sad, or whatever the emotion you feel is. You're overcome by that reaction. But I'm here to tell you, you can take control of this. You see, there's a step in the middle that we need to put in place. Yes, people will say, do, and act, and the world will happen, and it's not fair, and that's just the reality. But when things happen outside of us, we interpret what happens. And then we interpret this through those mental models, through these structures and frameworks that are not objective truths, they're just our subjective beliefs. And I'm sure many of us have experienced this recently. I actually heard someone yesterday explain to me that they used to think it was rude when they would see people from Asia wearing masks. They thought, oh, they felt like the person was trying to hide themselves or protect themselves from the dirty people around them. And then they found out that they were wrong, that many of the people they judged did it because they had a cold or they had a virus, and they were trying to stop the spread of it to others. That's just a change of a mental model. The second thing we interpret through is our mood. And this is really simple. If you're frustrated, tired, if you've got the shits for whatever reason, you see the world differently. And so what I want to challenge you to do today when you're going home or you're going to see your loved ones is pick a point a few minutes before you walk in the door and start taking control of your mood. How am I going to show up? What's my intention? I have a tree near my house, and when I drive past that tree or ride past that tree on the way home, I look at the tree and think to myself, what am I going to be when I walk in the door? How am I going to turn up? How do I want my daughter and my wife to experience me? I take control of my mood. It's not always easy, but know that once we have these two pieces within our control, then we choose to respond. And this is not about bottling things up and hiding things away. This is not about putting on fake smiles, but it is about understanding how our brains work and understanding that the way in which we respond changes the world around us. Your attitude shapes your actions, and your actions change the world. And our ability to take control of that is the power that we can all take in having a more positive impact on others. This is really critical. It's the way that our brains see the world that drives our decisions. And I just want to give you, I'm sure we're running low on time, but I want to give you a little tool. I want to give you a little tool that you can use with your clients, you can use in your daily life to see the world a little bit differently. It's called the perspective taking tool. And here's how it works. We start by putting down in the middle here a point of view that we don't understand. And I've made this as so simple that you can draw on a napkin. It's really easy to do. Now, around this point of view that we don't agree with or understand, we're going to analyze what might be some rational or emotional reasons why that point of view might be true. And then we're going to think more broadly, what are some structural policies, cultural people drivers that might make this true? It's not what we think, it's what might be the case. And let me give you an example. It's always easier to see it in an example sometimes. Let's think of the great toilet paper hoarding of 2020, which I'm sure will go down in history of silly events potentially, but I might think that that's a stupid thing to do. But at the moment, me thinking that anyone that would do this is stupid isn't very helpful. So in this case, you might put in the middle of this that one of your clients has made a silly decision, or customers are only picking things on price, and that might be your rationale for it. But what are the rational reasons that people might hoard toilet paper? Well, they need it. Shelves are empty. It's not particularly reusable. I wouldn't think we should be recycling our toilet paper. You can't really make your own, and it's not like you're going to stop needing it, is it? So these reasons, I might not agree with them, but they're real, and someone could have them, and they could sit in these cards in someone else's minds. Maybe they have a fear of missing out, embarrassment, greed, maybe it's a love for their family. They want to provide, or a sense of injustice that I shouldn't have toilet paper. And as we unpack these, we know from a structural perspective, there's a global pandemic. Well, that would cause someone, or could cause someone, to have that point of view. And there's policies and purchase limits and isolation laws that are going in place. And these things could cause someone to feel that. You might say, well, Australians are pretty individualistic, particularly here in Sydney where I am. There isn't a lot of sharing, and if there is sharing, it tends to make the news. So that's an interesting point, isn't it? And so maybe these cultural factors could drive someone to have that point of view. And indeed, individuals like children and spouse, shock jocks, politicians, these might influence people to have that point of view. Now, at this point, don't let me misconstrue this. I'm not trying to convince you that that point of view is right. What I'm trying to help you do is see that there's a whole world of possibilities out there, reasons why people do what they do. And constraining it to just your mental models leaves us at a loss. Because see, before, if I was going to try and stop people hoarding toilet paper, I might have gone, well, I'm just going to call them stupid. Why would you do that? Stop doing it. It's not very helpful. But now if I look at these different drivers, I've got different levers I might pull. Maybe there are politicians that are having a big impact, and maybe messages through them would help. Maybe it's a policy change. There was a really clever store in, I think it was in Sweden, that to combat people hoarding hand sanitizer it was. They said, here we go, really simple. One hand sanitizer bottle is $5, two is $50. Buy as many as you want. There's different ways, once we understand what drives people, to influence them and to share things with them, to understand what's going on for them. If someone who you're talking to is feeling sad, depressed, your view of whether they should or shouldn't be sad or depressed is irrelevant. Understanding what's going on for them, what's driving their decisions, That's empathy. And it's my view that empathy is the key. So this simple model of willing to, hopefully it'll be useful to you. Anyone can have it and share it. You can draw it on a piece of paper. But when you're looking at something and thinking, well, that's stupid, why would someone do that? Then get outside of your head. When you're looking to help someone who's in need, get outside of your head. Try and think what's really going on. What else might be true? It's my belief that empathy is this bridge. Empathy is this bridge that can help us connect these different brains. Because while your brain is amazing and complex, it's different to mine. And we live in a world now of incredible diversity. We need to be able to build these bridges and connect in new and different ways. And look, there is a selfish part to this. This happened to me many years ago. I was on a train in Thailand. I was about 20, on this overnight train, and as I was waking up in the morning, it was a rustling experience as I was coming to. I was a backpacker. I was only about 20. I grew up pretty poor, and I'd always wanted to travel. And as I woke up that morning, I saw a lady walking down the middle of the train, and she had a uniform on and a little wooden box. And she was collecting money from passengers who'd had food or drinks on the train and putting the money in this wooden box. And as she got to me, I pulled my wallet out and my heart sunk, so I didn't have any cash. Now, it was apparent pretty quickly that the wooden box wasn't PayWave enabled, and I wasn't going to be able to use my credit card. And anxiety arose. Terror arose. I thought, oh, you stupid kid. What are you doing here? You shouldn't have been here in the first place. You can't speak the language. Now you're going to be in trouble. And she must have seen all of this anxiety on her face, on my face. Because she did something amazing. She turned, she walked back down the train. She pulled her purse out of a small compartment, took out 300 baht, 10 Australian dollars. She put it in the wooden box, smiled at me, and just kept on walking. Now, I don't know how much money you make walking up and down the trains, but I know it's not enough. It's not enough to pay for some stupid kid. But in that moment, she saw the opportunity to help someone in need. She saw past everything else and she took the action. And it's partly the reason why I do what I do. Because I know what it feels like to be on the other end of that beautiful kindness, of that empathy. And this is not just for me, this is a selfish purpose as well. I want us as men to lead, to develop better relationships, make better choices, build better companies, become better people, because I know, and I feel you, Alex, that my daughter's going to be that little girl one day who goes into the workforce, who has a boyfriend, who has a life ahead of her, and I want that world to be that little bit better than it is today. But what I know is that the only people that can do that are us. It's our attitude that'll change our actions, and it's our actions that'll change the world. So my challenge to you is, when's that moment going to come? When's that little train moment going to turn up for you where you can reach out and help someone in need? Because if you can reach out and help others, then others can reach out and help you. And through this, we'll all become much better at tapping into the real emotions that drive what we do every day. So I want to say thank you again to FBAA for having me. It's been a real pleasure to be part of such an important day, and I look forward to some questions in the panel, or if you have other questions you don't get time, send me an email, a LinkedIn, carrier pigeon, whatever you need to get in touch. I'd love to help you further. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was brilliant. I think that some of the examples that you brought up there are very relevant to everybody's life. I know the toilet paper example is obviously becoming more relevant in South Australia at the moment. But when it was back in the old days, my mum was certainly one of those toilet paper hoarders, and I didn't show her any empathy at all. I certainly thought she was quite silly. However, the positive of that was I didn't have to buy, and still haven't bought any toilet paper for quite some time. So there are positives and negatives when it comes to that. And obviously, there's no secret that men and women are wired very differently as well. I was just asking my wife, especially about the cooking and the cleaning as well. But that's okay. Thanks very much, Dan. So look, it's come to our final session for our International Men's Day. I'd like to welcome back everyone so that you would have heard from for a Q&A panel to answer any questions that you might have and to have a conversation around this. So we've got Alex, Philip, Daniel and myself, and Pete will be the MC, so I'll hand over to you, mate.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. And guys, thank you for your contributions today. You know, Philip, Daniel, and Alex. First thing I do is dump those bloody things. So I actually can't see a goddamn thing out of them. I need trifocals. That's better. I can see everybody now. My God. Oh, sorry about that. It's life and it's old age, but you get that. Hey, Daniel, thanks for your conversation. I was intrigued. I was just reflecting a moment ago. We've taken a shot at Jeep ads, and probably rightly so. I don't know if any of you seen the Jeep ads of late. They're now saying, yeah, we're shit, but it's okay because we fixed it. They go, nah. So yeah, the old Jeep ads, they're one of a kind. And then old Donald Trump came up along the way. And I have a dear friend of mine who is from Houston, Texas. And since COVID, he's been stuck in Bangkok in Thailand. Long story. But he's a Republican. So he and I don't necessarily talk about the US elections because it's not necessarily runs on a journey that we want to progress down. And it's probably similar to the New South Wales Premier. And when we're talking about sharing, maybe that's a bit of a challenge. I know there's no love lost between Queensland and New South Wales. And the funny thing will wind up being at the moment, based on the methodology they use to open borders, we're likely to open the border to Victoria before New South Wales. Sorry, but I'm going to find that hilarious. I know I'm not sort of, you guys in New South Wales, I'm sorry, but from a political point of view, it's actually really funny. But anyway, I wrap it on. Let's get on to some Q&A because I know we're over time. I'm sorry about that. No, we've got some questions here. We probably don't have time to go through them all, but I will try and kick into some key questions I've got here. Actually, Philip, I want to go to you. Mate, what inspired you to start Savings Brothers? Such a wonderful initiative.
Yeah, my personal experiences, Pete, I got out of broking and I wanted to start a digital business, and I thought I wanted to be a rock star, traveling the world, living the laptop lifestyle. But that kind of thought, well, I felt somewhat empty. I'm like Todd Duncan, and in my video, I had prostate cancer some 6 years ago, and like I had a very good mortgage practice, but I was very, very stressed, and I was probably not very happy, even though I was making what I would say was a nice living. I went to a good school in Melbourne. Over the journey, I met some really great young men, Pete. But since that time, 4 of my buddies decided to take their life for different reasons and at different points in their world. And when I said as per the video, it just impacted me, this course that I did called the Brand Incubator, about pinpointing your purpose. And it just something it was like just a switch went on for me. And I just felt really, really moved by it. And I just wanted to make a difference. And so for me, and the whole Keep Five Alive is about helping men actually be proactive with their health. And so I just thought, you know what, because I've gone through, and Pete, you know the journey well. I went through a divorce after being married for 22 and a half years. I haven't lived with my sons. I've got 2 boys. One's actually just finished his 5th year 12 exam just now, today. I've got another boy, so I've got 2 boys, 20 and 18. And whilst I talk to my boys, I haven't lived with my boys at all since I got went through a separation on the 14th of June 2018. In fact, my youngest son has only ever spent one night with me since. And so I harbour a lot of pain. And I know a lot of men out there harbour a significant amount of pain. And I just wanted to make a difference. And I really wanted to create a legacy. I wanted my boys to be proud of me. I wanted my boys on my deathbed to say, my dad was a good man. Phil, dad spoke and did a lot of things that helped a lot of people, because it's all very well to say you drive the convertible BMW and got the big flashy house, the beach house and all that rubbish. At the end of the day, no one really gives a shit. No one will care. 5 minutes later, it'll be like, oh, hey, is that deal settled yet? Oh shit, the vouchers was bloody what came in. Have you spoken to credit? And so I wanted to create a legacy that Saving Brothers goes way beyond my life. I've said to people in the past, Pete, that I'm like the bus driver in Forrest Gump. I'm just picking people up along the way. So it's up to people where they want to get on. As she says to Forrest in that movie. Were you going to get on or not? And so I want my legacy, Pete, to be actually something that's significant. And we're in many countries across the globe. As you well know, Pete, you know the story. I've got coaches and mentors coming to Saving Brothers. We have a private Facebook group. It's quite humbling when you see men who are so vulnerable, being more mature, actually being in touch with their feelings. And we teach vulnerability as a strength. Daniel, I'm sure you would understand that. Alex, you would understand that. Vulnerability is a strength. This bullshit machoism that we were taught is not real. And so what we want to do is actually unpack all that and say, guys, you know what? The more you can discuss stuff, and that's why we love that question, how's your day going out of 10? It's such a really disarming way to engage with men. And you can use it with women as well, of course.
Yeah, mate, that's excellent. And I can tell you right now, there's no macho going on over here in this suit. Let me give you the tip.
I love it, mate. I love it, brother.
Mate, thanks so much. Hey, Alex, how have you found, or what have you done, I guess, to get through some of those difficult periods or some of those challenges that you faced in your journey? And you know, it's interesting, and you and I have shared a lot over the years. And you know, when you go through life's journey and you wind up in different situations and you're talking to different people, the things you come across that can be really confronting. You got any tips as to how you've dealt with those sorts of things?
Yeah, Whitey, we have, and I know, you know, both of us have had some pretty colourful experiences through our lives as well. But I think for me, personally, it's about being able to, one, acknowledge I'm not perfect. I do make mistakes. And I was talking before about intent. And what the intent is. And I look to just generally at people when they make mistakes or when they do something, what was the intent behind it? And it's okay to make mistakes, providing you don't do them over and over again. You learn from them, ideally. Some people, you know, that takes a lot longer. But I think ultimately what I've learned is that I like to play to my strengths, and I know my weaknesses. And when I think about the work or home, I'm playing to my strengths. You know, I'm not a great cook. My wife is an amazing cook. So we're playing to her strengths in the kitchen. My, you know, strength is very much a supportive role there. However, I've got other strengths. You know, the list is very long. I won't go through it all. But so I think about when I meet people, when I recruit people in the workplace. You know, it's easy to be attracted to like-minded people, and there's that natural attraction, and it's easy. We're comfortable with that. Where you want to be uncomfortable, what's going to ultimately drive better business outcomes or even personal outcomes, is where you can connect with people who you know, at the risk of sounding corny, complete you, right? Like it's you know, fill in the gaps where you're not strong, and therefore, you know, it'll result in better business outcomes, better personal outcomes. So I love talking to introverts. I don't think they like talking to me, but I love talking to them because it's a different perspective. It's a different way of thinking. So, yeah, I think, does that help?
Yeah, so yeah, and mate, look, I can tell you now, I've learnt what my strengths are at home, and that is shut my mouth. My wife's always right. It's cool. And it works. And you, I may joke, but Janet generally is right. I'm generally wrong. It's just a fact of life, and I live with it. But, you know, in 10 years, actually 10 and a half years, neither of us have ever had an argument. And it's not that we don't have our own opinions. It's actually we respect each other's opinion. It's been an interesting journey. But yeah, mate, thanks for sharing that. Hey, Mark, over to you in WA. Buddy, I just want to follow on the COVID lockdown style of conversation. And Mark, for everybody, joined us in March of this year as we went into lockdown. And the poor bastard hasn't even been over here yet. He's been stuck at home. Mate, how was that for you? Because it couldn't have been easy at the time. And you've up until recent, you've basically been at home, only recently now starting to get back out and about and to meet people. Yet we've had an interesting employee relationship for starting in March. Nice to meet you, by the way. What's it been like?
Oh, look, it's at the start. I won't lie. I mean, I was probably shit scared that it wasn't going to all work out. And I'd been in my previous job for 15 years, and I chose coronavirus to change jobs. And I was like, what the hell have I done? But for probably 2 weeks, I was hoping, that I wasn't going to be, last one in, first one out type of thing. But because it's a well-known phrase, and it's a well-known way of kicking people out as well. So that was certainly on my mind for at least 2 or 3 weeks. But the longer and longer it's been, and as I said a little bit earlier, it's been almost 8 months now that I've been with the association. That it was such a necessary job that I came into as well, which really made me feel very good. I hit the phones big time, as you know, Pete. Making contact with as many members as I could, and the amount of people that said, you're the first person that's called me up from the FBAA, really, cemented the fact that I was genuinely needed. And from a personal point of view, it made me feel good. And even I think 2 days ago, I made a call to someone in Melbourne, and again, I wasn't expecting to hear someone from the FBAA, etc., etc. I just said, how are you going? And he's like, been doing shit, mate. I've been in asset finance in Melbourne. And he's like, you know what, but thank you so much for giving me a call. And, even if for those 5 minutes, if I made his day, then, I've done my job for the day, So
but
it's been up and down, and obviously.
Have those things helped you with your personal journey as to, dealing with lockdown, being stuck at home, dealing with your own mental health challenges and so on, if you've had any? But just dealing with that whole process, has that helped you get through?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And, it helped me personally in my job. It was almost like I've done an apprenticeship without doing anything for the first few months, which has certainly helped me learn a lot. But what are you talking about? But, obviously, and I've spoken to you about this, Pete, there was a point where we certainly had our borders down, and I was feeling, I guess, a bit of a disconnect with some of the guys in head office, because I've only met you for an hour, Pete, during the interview. So it was a very good interview, obviously. But, all these people that I work with, I still haven't met face to face. And I think, there's been part of the time that I've been with the association, it got to me a little bit for sure. But I just had to, kind of look at the long game, and hopefully I'll get over to Queensland, where I'm sure it looks like this every single day. I don't know yet. That I'll be able to get over there for sure.
Don't worry, buddy. 2022 will be here soon. Okay. We'll make it sooner than that. Don't worry. All right.
Thanks for the vote of confidence there, mate.
No worries. Dan, I'll finish this up with you, if that's okay. And I'm sorry I'm cutting the Q&A a little bit short, but I'm conscious we're running over time. I guess quite often people think that empathy is a weak or soft sort of thing. What's your thoughts around that? And is it also, this is something that I've got to try and do a lot better at, is it possible to control your mood? And if so, what are the tips to be able to do that?
Yeah, so look, I think with the empathy space, it does have this, people misconstrue it because they think it's trying to mirror people's emotions, or it's being weak, or even that if you're too empathetic or emotional, that people can take advantage of you. And I actually think all of that's rubbish. You can, let's say you've got an employee that's working for you, or someone's working for you, and they're not doing a good job. It's not empathetic to not say anything. It's unkind to not say. It might be nice, but it's not kind, because they're not going to understand. They're not going to get better. Things are only going to get worse. It's more empathetic to say, okay, what's going on? Let's get into it. Let's understand why you're not performing. Is it something going on at home? Is it you don't have the skills? It's about building that understanding, because until you've got understanding, then you're just making up stuff from your own mental models, your own thoughts and beliefs. And so empathy is really about putting aside some of your your belief structures and systems, all the stuff that, all those automatic things that you typically use, and going, bugger it, I don't know, and I want to find out. And I'm going to sit down, I'm going to ask questions, I'm going to explore. And at the end of the day, you still have to make decisions. Some of them will be hard. Some people won't like them. Welcome to being a human. That's just how it is. But doing it without understanding versus doing it with understanding is the big gap that we can fill there with empathy. And look, in terms of controlling your mood, there's no perfect answer here. It takes a lot of work, because you've got to remember you're trying to control this ancient part of your brain. I'll give you an example. Peter, you ever sit down on the couch, you got your popcorn, you watch some sort of scary movie, right? You're sitting there, you're on the couch, you got the popcorn, you're watching the scary movie, the guy jumps out with a chainsaw, what do? Yeah, you're scared. Just stop and just logically think about how ridiculous that is as a concept. The guy's on the TV, it can't hurt you. You're in absolutely no danger. Actually, the scariest thing at the moment is the popcorn as a choking hazard. You're not scared of that, you're stuffing that in as fast as you can. This part of our brain, this old part of our brain, doesn't deal with logic, doesn't care about what's real. And so a lot of our emotions come from this old place, and yet too often we don't try and control it. We don't remember that we've got executive power. So the first thing I'd say is recognize your emotions. When you feel something, give it a name. Okay, I feel frustrated now, or angry, or upset, or afraid. Whatever the emotion is, give it a name, and then say, okay, is that useful for me now? Is that what I want to feel? Because, being scared, if you got scared every time you got in a car, wouldn't be very useful. Now, it might be appropriate because lots of people die, but it's not useful. And so eventually we go, okay, I'm going to overcome that and control it. We have to build those same sort of practices. There are things like mindfulness that can help, meditation can help, and it's actually pretty heavily scientifically backed now that these things are good for quietening down the certain brain functions. But my simple advice would be just start by giving it a name. The other thing I'd say is be a bit kinder to yourself. If you're angry, it's okay, be angry, feel it. But it's not, you're not angry, you're feeling angry. And start splitting these two things apart. You're not sad, you're feeling sad. And you're an amazing person, we love you. You can have the shit sometimes, that's okay. But don't think that emotion is you. Start to split those things apart.
No, very true. Thank you so much for that. That's excellent. And I do apologise, we have run out of time, but Alex, Daniel, Philip, Mark, thank you very much for sharing your stories. Love you all. That's really wonderful stuff. Mark, I'll swing back to you just to wrap up, and everyone stay well and look after each other.
Thanks very much, Pete. That was great. I love that Q&A. It was really good to hear some good, honest stories throughout there as well. So thanks very much for everyone. It does bring us to a close, though. As Pete was alluding to, I think we're a little bit over time, but that is okay. I think we've all got everything out of it, what we wanted to as well today. I'll just go through a few items before we do close off today, though. Firstly, as Pete mentioned, there is the confidential counselling program that we mentioned. You can access that through the members login of the FBAA website, or refer to the IMD brochure for more information. Secondly, the next fortnight, Pete's Q&A with Whitey will return on the 3rd of December. I cannot believe it's actually December now. And we will be having a conversation around your bid compliance stress relief lifeline. And that is with David Carson, Assure, and Suncorp, with more around this and overcoming any anxious and overwhelming feelings anyone might be feeling. So register and tune in for this one. We'd also like to thank the content providers for today again for providing your time and sharing your insights for this IMD. Look out for an email to follow with these presenter contact details and links to resources to assist you. Your FBAA 1.5 CPD hour and code, and a short feedback survey to complete to ensure we are targeting your needs. You'll be able to watch back this recording, which will also have other video messages that we didn't have time to show on the FBAA YouTube channel via the link in the follow-up email. And please feel free to pass it on to anyone who might benefit from this digital event. Hopefully we can see you all face to face again soon, but either way, we are looking forward to carrying on the conversation for International Women's Day again next year in March. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Stay well, everyone. Thank you.